The bright lights of the Graham Norton show bathed the studio in a lively, playful glow. The familiar set, with its plush red sofa, the sleek modern coffee table, and the lively backdrop of twinkling city lights, was ready for another night of laughter, mischief, and viral moments. Graham Norton himself, clad in a sparkling navy blazer, adjusted his microphone and turned to the roaring audience with that signature devilish smile. "Tonight," he purred, "we have a very special guest. Some call her bold, others call her, well, a menace in high heels. Let's find out which is closer to the truth. Please welcome Karoline Leavitt." The crowd responded with a mixture of polite applause and audible murmurs of curiosity and perhaps skepticism. Karoline Leavitt wasn't a typical guest on Norton's famously liberal-leaning show. In fact, she was often cast as the very emblem of everything Graham loved to tease: sharp conservatism, unapologetic patriotism, and the fierce loyalty to Donald Trump that sent shivers down progressive spines. Caroline stepped onto the stage with a confident grace that belied her youth. Dressed in an elegant dark green dress, minimal jewelry, and a warm but unyielding smile, she looked like someone who knew exactly what battlefield she was walking into and wasn't remotely intimidated. As she approached, Graham extended his hand with an exaggerated flourish. "Karoline Leavitt," he said dramatically, "our studio insurance policy just doubled." Laughter burst from the crowd. Carolyn shook his hand firmly and replied sweetly, "I'm happy to boost the economy, Graham, even if it's just your insurance rates." The audience chuckled again, this time with a surprising note of appreciation. She wasn't defensive. She was poised, dangerous. As she sat, Graham leaned in with a mock conspiratorial tone. "Be honest, Caroline," he said, his grin wicked. "Do you ever just wake up, look at your MAGA hat, and think, maybe today I'll try yoga and socialism?" The audience roared, sensing a setup, but Caroline didn't blink. "Every day," she said, crossing her legs elegantly, "and every day I thank God I have common sense instead." A ripple of laughter, some approving, some shocked, rolled through the studio. Graham tilted his head, amused. He could tell already this wasn't going to be the easy punching bag he might have expected. Instead, it would be a duel. And the audience, sensing the tension, leaned forward eagerly, hungry for the clash. The night was just beginning. The interview kicked into high gear almost immediately. Graham, ever the provocateur, wasted no time. "So Caroline," he said, flipping through his cards dramatically, "you're young, ambitious, fiercely political, and yet here you are on my sofa. You do realize I'm basically the human embodiment of everything you campaign against, right?" The crowd burst out laughing again, the room charged with electricity. Carolyn smiled coolly. "If I only sat with people I agreed with, Graham, I'd never get anything interesting done. Besides, life's richer when you step outside the echo chamber." A few murmurs of agreement, genuine ones, echoed in the crowd. Graham wasn't used to his audience warming to his conservative guests. He narrowed his eyes slightly, then leaned in, smirking. "Speaking of echo chambers," he said slyly, "you're a big advocate for traditional values. Yet here you are, on a show hosted by a flamboyant Irishman in a room full of liberals. Is this your version of missionary work?" The studio howled at the insinuation. Carolyn laughed lightly, refusing to take the bait. "I think of it more like visiting the zoo," she said. "You admire the beautiful creatures, appreciate the environment, but you don't necessarily want to stay overnight." The studio exploded. Even Graham had to clap his hands in delight, despite himself. For the first time that evening, it was undeniable. The audience wasn't laughing at Caroline. They were laughing with her. And Graham knew it. He adjusted his tactic, going for the heavy artillery. "But surely, Caroline," he said mock wistful, "you must admit that clinging to old ideologies, faith, nationalism, all that, is a little, well, retro? Like bringing a VHS tape to a Netflix party?" A good line. The audience roared again. Caroline's eyes gleamed with a practiced sharpness. "Retro can be beautiful, Graham. A world where kids respect their parents, people value hard work, and politicians tell the truth might sound old-fashioned, but maybe that's exactly what we need to reboot the system." The applause that followed was longer, stronger. Something was happening in that studio, a shift. Graham Norton, the king of late-night laughter, had stumbled into something he hadn't quite prepared for. An opponent who could match him beat for beat, and do it smiling. The final portion of the interview felt different. The jokes were still there, but the laughter had changed tones. It wasn't a mocking anymore. It was impressed. Curious, even the most skeptical viewers sensed it. Karoline Leavitt wasn't just surviving Graham Norton's show. She was thriving. Desperate for one last comeback, Graham tried again. "So what's the end game, Karoline?" he asked with mock seriousness. "President Leavitt? Kingmaker? Or are you secretly plotting to ban British accents and force us all to say y'all?" The audience laughed, but there was an anticipatory hush too. Karoline leaned back serene. "I'm not here to ban accents or lifestyles, Graham," she said, her voice steady. "I'm here to remind people that freedom isn't about agreeing with me. It's about having the right to disagree without being silenced." The room fell into a brief, stunned silence. Then, thunderous applause. Cheers. Graham, ever the professional, raised his hands in surrender. "Well, folks," he said, grinning wide, "tonight I learned two things. Never underestimate a conservative with a killer smile, and never invite Karoline Leavitt onto your show if you're planning to win." The audience roared with laughter, and a standing ovation followed. As Karoline shook Graham's hand once more, he leaned in and whispered, "You're lethal, you know that." Karoline just winked. "Only when necessary." As she exited the stage, the social media storm began. Clips, quotes, and hashtags exploding across Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Hashtag Karoline Norton, Queen Leavitt, #freedom wins. The reviews were unanimous. Karoline Leavitt hadn't just survived a liberal late-night ambush. She had turned it into a victory tour. And somewhere backstage, even Graham Norton was laughing. Not with irony this time, but with genuine admiration for the woman who came, saw, and conquered. In one of the most surprising moments in recent late-night television history, Karoline Leavitt, the youngest former White House press secretary, not only survived her appearance on The Graham Norton Show, she conquered it. Facing a notoriously liberal audience and a host famous for his sharp, sometimes cutting humor, Leavitt entered the studio under heavy expectations of a rough night. What unfolded, however, was a masterclass in political poise, quick wit, and charismatic leadership. Throughout the evening, Norton lobbed his signature sarcastic jabs, from jokes about traditional values to playful mockery of her conservative views. Yet Leavitt countered each one with deft, articulate responses, blending humor, reason, and unwavering confidence. The breakthrough moment came when Graham jokingly asked if Karoline envisioned a world where everyone spoke with Southern accents and embraced old-fashioned politics. Leavitt, without missing a beat, replied, "Freedom isn't about everyone agreeing with me. It's about everyone having the right to disagree without fear." The audience, initially skeptical, erupted into applause. Online, clips of the moment went viral, with hashtags like #Karoline and #FreedomWins trending across platforms. Even Graham Norton, known for his quick comebacks, conceded defeat with his laugh. "Never invite Karoline Leavitt on if you plan to win." Political analysts and media outlets hailed the appearance as a cultural moment, with many noting how Leavitt's ability to dominate a traditionally hostile environment signaled a new era for young conservatives making waves beyond their base. Whether loved or hated, one fact is undeniable. Karoline Leavitt didn't just show up to play, she showed up to win.